Welcome back to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Beth Hand, and my guest today is Executive Coach Rich Bruno. Rich, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Katie. Thank you.
Absolutely. So before we dive into our topics we kind of have lined out for today, I was hoping you would give our listeners a little bit about your background and kind of your previous work history that led you up into being an executive coach.
Absolutely. Happy to share that. So I am a 30-year supply chain leader focused on talent management and development. And I retired 5 years ago, almost to the day, from Johnson & Johnson. And I also have a small business that I run, which I did concurrent with my Johnson & Johnson career for a period of time, a long period of time. It's called the Max Challenge. It's basically a fitness and nutrition program. It's basically helping to improve the lives of others in health and wellness, mental and physical well-being. And then my most recent venture is as an executive coach for the last 5 years. I got certified as a John Maxwell coach, speaker, and trainer about 3 or 4 months after my retirement for J&J. And I've been coaching business owners, executives, and their teams. I do workshops and seminars, leadership trainings, some speaking. So yeah, that's basically brings me to today. I will tell you that I am absolutely living my best life, without a doubt. First, the personal side, I'm a dad and husband of almost 27 years. I have 3 great kids, and a real driver of my retirement at age 55, it was literally 2 weeks after I turned 55, was a desire to have a greater quality of life. And I know that we're going to touch on that today, but having a greater quality of life, I was racing through everything, fully invested in my family and my career, but it was quite a bit, especially managing a small business at the same time. So I decided to pump the brakes because I wanted to get greater quality out of living every day and enjoying my family, my lifestyle, and even serving my own personal needs.
Yeah, that's great. And so let's dive in a little bit on that. Your background is very, very interesting. I love that you became a John Maxwell certified coach. That is such a unique certification and such a great program.
Yes.
Talk to us about, you mentioned you were kind of running 2 races at a time. You were a fully involved husband and dad and a fully involved career man as well. Talk to us about being kind of a well-balanced corporate leader. How do you balance being the family man who's there to support your family and be involved in their lives, while also maybe running a small business or being part of the corporate world? What are your tips for that?
Yeah, I think there are many. And I'll tell you, I developed this concept maybe about a year ago. And it really involves that desire to have a totally fulfilled life. And what I observed with leaders around me in my corporate career is that there are so many pressures, right, to deliver results, especially in publicly traded companies. But there's always that grind to do more, deliver more. And it ends up being such a concentration of your life, right? So you become one-dimensional where you're only focused on the professional driving forces that are present for you. For me, the reason that I retired and what really kind of spurred this concept of the well-balanced leader is that I subscribe to you can have it all. You don't have to just be one or the other. And I've been able to manage that balance. But the key is, and back to your tips, it's about making choices. It really is. Many senior leaders are so driven to drive those results, be that 10x, growth performer. And that's all well and good. But my theory is that you can still do that and make choices for your own self-care, your relationships, hobbies, family, etc. If you don't do that, this is what I fear. For those leaders that are hard driving, once they get to retirement, there's nothing left after that. And that is going to be a problem, right? So when you leave your very fulfilling corporate life and you go to your life outside of corporate America or your career, whatever it is, there needs to be something else to excite you, right? Something else to go to. I want to know that I have my family, I have all my personal interests, right? I can still do the things I know and love and look forward to doing that, not have to just kind of come to a screeching halt from a career standpoint and then having nothing to go to.
Right. It's interesting. We met with an estate planning client of ours just yesterday, and that was part of the conversation. He has been a business owner all of his life. It started as a small family business. He has grown it, and now he's in the process of kind of passing it down to his sons to take over.
Yeah.
But all he ever was, most of his time and energy was spent on this business. And so he's struggling in these early years of retirement because he doesn't really know what to do. So he came in yesterday talking about maybe starting a new business and doing something else. And I feel like that's a conversation we have time and time again with our business leader clients. They have been part of this grind for so long that even after everything goes to plan and they are selling their business or passing down their business, they don't really know what to do with that free time. So the other thing that you said that I loved is that you can have it all. I love that concept, that idea that you can have it all. Is there a time or a story you can give us on something that you did for this that you did feel like you did really well, or something that maybe you didn't do really well as far as being a well-balanced leader and being the family guy and the work boss as well?
You know what? I think the time leading up to that decision to retire, I wasn't doing my best job, right? So I describe it as being like a hamster on a wheel. So running a small business, anyone who's done that knows it's every bit of what you got and more, right? You're never off. But imagine you're doing that, and I don't do things halfway, so I was all in, very, very hands-on type of leader in growing that business. But at the same time, I had to juggle a very demanding career, as well as the needs of my family, which are not just me, but my wife and I, raising 3 young children. So I really took stock and stepped back and just started to realize everything that was going on. And I realized that I had to make a choice. And that's where the well-balanced leader concept really came from. I refined it over the last year, and I could talk about the slices of the pie that get developed in it. But the point of all of it is that I realized that I wasn't doing the things that I really wanted to do at the depth and level that I wanted to do them at. Right? So I was at all the practices. I went to all the games, the recitals. I did all of that. But I raced through all of it. And I wasn't liking that. And it was such a tough grind that after 7 years of doing this small business and my career and the family growing up along the way, it was time to just rethink what would be best. What kind of lifestyle would be better than what I had previously? So yeah, I think the learning was I could do it better, and then making choices to do it better.
Absolutely. So you became an executive coach. Talk to us about kind of what that means and what are the elements involved in being an executive coach? What do you walk your clients through?
Yes. So I do a few different things, and I've served a variety of clients. But specific to the executive coaching, where there's really great value is working alongside a CEO or senior leader and or their teams to help the organization be optimized, or to help a business scale its growth. Either way. So it could be with business owners, it could be with organizations, larger organizations. And the real value is in really breaking down the pain points that an organization has. And I've surveyed this, and I know what a lot of those pain points are. Just digging into those pain points, understanding or discovering what it is about those pain points that can be improved or changed, and working alongside the executive and their teams to make those improvements. A few examples. Some companies really struggle with hiring and staffing. Is their selection process just not robust enough, where they're not putting the right people in the right jobs? That's one example. Prioritization and time management is usually one of the top things that if you ask most people, they struggle with that. I have a tried and true approach to breaking down prioritization, how to execute to your best level by way of this prioritization exercise. And that really helps. It filters down through the whole organization. Another example of that where it can help an organization is in the organizational culture. Are you creating a space where people want to come to work? And if you're not, then when you start looking at your metrics like retention, right? you see those things are lacking. People are not fulfilled. They're not growing. They're not moving up in the organization. Those are things that really effective leaders know how to address proactively. And then on the topic of leadership, I do group leadership training that can be applied to these organizations as well. So just a few different examples of like how they can be, those particular tools that I have can be applied. And they really come from 30 years of experience as a supply chain leader, leading and developing teams. It comes from learning how to stand up my business on my own from the ground up and really focusing on the most important things: fiscal discipline, your operating processes, the people you hire. And I can go on and on, but just taking the value from those experiences and bringing that forward to organizations, I find is really invaluable to them.
That's great. Would you say you have an ideal client? What would an ideal client look like for you?
My ideal client, I would say, is a CEO in their organization of maybe 50 to 100 people, where they are, not completely mature as an organization. They have those pain points. So my ideal client is someone who's saying, recognize that after this conversation, this discovery session, we need help, right? We can't retain talent. We can't find the right candidates. We can't, develop the right culture. We're not cultivating a leadership, the right leaders in our organization. So that would be my ideal client.
That's great. A great answer, and certainly something that's needed in the field. I could think of multiple clients that we have that would be very helped by your services, certainly. To change topic a little bit, you mentioned something before as we were speaking that I found very interesting. Talk to us a little bit about annual goal setting. What is that, and what is the purpose of it?
Yeah, I've worked with so many people on goal setting, whether it's organizations that really need structure or whether it's individuals. And I practice this myself, right? So I'm taking my experiences from corporate America and I'm applying them to myself and to the people that I work with. The annual goal setting process is, in effect, a way to document and hold yourself accountable to executing plans. That's really what it is. Now, there's an element of this called SMART goals. There's an acronym for this, which is really that they're, very measurable, right? They're achievable, they're realistic, and you put a time-bound element to it, right? So when you write goals, you want to make them very specific. Let's just use an organization as an example. You want to set not only annual goals, but I also work with organizations on strategic planning. What's the 1 to 3 year view of what you want to achieve so that you can build back the people, the resources, the technology, all of that. But when you look at annual goal setting, it's about documenting really what your key priorities are for the company. Why it's so valuable to document them and to put an action plan against that, even more importantly, because that's where you really drive the results, is that becomes a communication tool and a measuring stick for the organization. You could look at these goals and say, okay, are we on track? Take it a step further. When those goals cascade down to departments and individuals, that's the meaningful conversation you could have with your team member. We had these 3 goals to achieve. You contributed in these ways, and you can more objectively assess a person's performance by having structured goals. The other thing is it gives you direction, right? Without a written goal, you really don't know where you're going, right? You certainly don't know how you're going to get there. So I feel like structured goal settings always, for me, has been a game changer. And I measure myself against them on a monthly basis. I literally have a formal review process. Every month, I go back to my goals. How did I progress with this? How would I grade myself? What would I do differently? What do I need to do more of? Right? So it's a healthy way to just have this continuous improvement mindset and have something to shoot for.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And I love that entire thought process. And I love that beyond annual goals, you mentioned having monthly goals, just something, like you said, something to shoot for, something to measure things by. I do feel like kind of in the corporate world, when you don't have a very specific written goal, whether you're the business owner or part of a team, it's easy to kind of wander off the path.
Yes.
And get lost and lose that sense of productivity. And so I love the idea of setting larger annual goals. And then I like the monthly check-in idea. Sometimes, as you were talking through, I could tell you'd really thought out the monthly check-in process and taking that taking a few minutes each month to really take a harsh and very realistic look at, did we progress this month? Did we actually make progress? What went wrong? While that's not any fun, if things aren't going as you hoped they would, I can definitely see how taking a few minutes to do that would better to catch it after a month or two than a year or two or 5 years or 8 years or 10 years without drifting, without really staying on track and reaching that goal. So I love the whole process you have laid out for that. And is that something you help your clients
Absolutely.
with? Do you help them kind of think through what their goals should be and map those out?
I absolutely do. We build it from the ground up. It's their goals, not mine. Where I really have been helpful, whether it's with an individual or with organizations, is by being that accountability partner, right? So what I love to do is not only measure the goals and make them very, very visible and tangible for everyone to execute their plans against, but I also use it to rationalize how we're spending our time. So when you think about priorities, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, okay, I use my calendar very religiously. My calendar is my roadmap. And if the things that I want to achieve on my goals are not on my calendar, then I'm not spending my time on the right things. That's the way I look at it. And I do that with organizations. Okay, what did we achieve? How are we managing day to day, week to week, month to month? And are they driving back to those goals that we committed to? So that's very important.
It's so simple and so logical, but something I don't think a lot of people have really taken time to think through. Does your calendar match your goals?
I absolutely agree with you. Most people do not do that. And that's what I found just through my own practical experience and deploying this. So I do think that, goals have always served me well because they help me to be driven and accountable. But I can also measure my progress. That's the other thing. Like I know good from bad. How did I do?
Right.
It's not this subjective. You make the goal specific, you measure it, you know how you did.
Right. One goal I know that a lot of our clients and our listeners to this podcast as well always kind of have in the back of their minds is the goal of retirement. So talk to us about retirement, kind of, as you put it, the next chapter, the best chapter.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on retirement and planning for that, and your tips and advice about retirement?
Yes, thank you for asking that. First of all, this is not just a willy-nilly, you wake up one day and say, yeah, I think I'll stop working tomorrow. I think it should be purposeful and planned. Okay, I did that. My quick story is I was 6 months from turning 55. I was driving home and I'm like, I got to make some changes. Like we talked about this, right? So the very first thing I did is I called my financial advisor on the way home. Craig, have a crazy question for you. Can I retire at 55? And without even a breath, he said, you absolutely can. You just have to make a choice what kind of lifestyle you want to live. So he put it back on me. So, okay, so in other words, are you going to be active, be an earner, have a lifestyle you want, or are you going to make choices? You can still retire, but you may have to live a different way. Fine. I drove home, walked in the door, said to my wife, we need to talk. She said, what's wrong? And I said, nothing's wrong. I want to retire in 6 months. And she's like, that's fantastic. 100% of the, so the point of all of this is make sure that you have those boxes that you need to check for retirement. Obviously, the financial one is a big one. Can I live going forward and, support myself without an income or with maybe a subdued version of an income, whatever it is. Make that plan. What is it I want to do when I retire? Some people just say, you know what? I'm tapping out. I've had enough. I don't want to work. That's cool. You might have a retirement plan. You're set. But again, find the boxes you need to check. Financial, what is of interest to you? What do you want to do after you retire? Too many people retire and then say, oh, what do I do? Oh, geez, I thought it was going to be different. Or, yeah, this isn't as great as I thought it was going to be, right? That's not good. Now, again, you can't predict everything, but my point in all this is have a plan. Think through it. I thought through it. I knew what my motivators were. I knew what my why was. I was very clear on my why. And I believed enough in myself, and I was willing to bet on myself that I was willing to carry forward and solve for the things that weren't quite as certain for me, right? So just understand to the best of your ability what you're getting into, why you're doing it, and what you're going to go do next. And try to be as clear about that as you can.
Yeah, we touched on this kind of in conversation before the podcast, but we have so many clients that have been lifelong business leaders and business owners and CEOs and in the corporate world that retire, and then within a few months they're back in our office maybe telling us they want to start a new business or a new venture because they had this vision of retirement but really no solid plan. I remember we had one client who'd been a business owner that grew his business and then transferred it, and he came in after 3 months of retirement and said, if I play another round of golf, it'll kill me. I thought that's what I wanted to spend retirement doing. I've done it. We've traveled some. I've golfed. There's that purpose. They're missing that purpose. Business has always been purpose.
Yes.
And so I like that you kind of help people think through the retirement process more on the front end. What is that really going to look like? Not just financially, although obviously that is extremely important, but also on the purpose side of things. You can retire, but are you going to still find something that makes you feel fulfilled? Or are you going to be back in here 3 months from now, 6 months from now, sick of golf and trying to figure out what your next step is? So I like that that's kind of something that you help your clients think through. That side of retirement doesn't get talked about nearly enough. It's typically the financial side, maybe even the business planning exit side, but we don't talk to clients and people enough about kind of the mental difference that happens when they've been a lifelong hard worker and then they retire and golf may not be, enough purpose for them.
Yes, if I can comment on that, I just believe everybody should have an exit strategy, whether it's a person or a business. And with that exit strategy, there should be some scenarios that you can play out, right? Because you don't know it all and you can't anticipate everything. So, okay, when I retire, I think I might golf twice a week. I may go and do volunteer work. I may pick up a side hustle. I may invest. Whatever it is you're thinking of doing, I would say have a list of things.
Yeah.
Right? Just have an exit strategy that includes some potential options for you. Going into it with no thought is not a plan. And then coming back to the well-balanced leader, another great value in that well-balanced leader, you mentioned it being proactive. It's about looking at the different pieces of the pie that will help you manage the personal side of things, not just the professional side of things, right? So, and I think that tees up the planning for retirement. So helping clients with an exit strategy is something I can do based on my own personal experience, everything we just discussed around the thoughtfulness, and using the well-balanced leader to kind of decide what it is you like to do, or maybe even some future goal setting. What is it you want to do going forward, right?
Makes perfect sense. So kind of with moving sort of along that vein of being well-balanced, another thing you talk to your clients about is health and wellness. How does health and wellness play into being a great leader or a great business owner? Why is that important?
It is extremely, extremely important, and I'm so glad you brought that up. So I don't look at this as a selfish statement. I'm going to say it. Some people hear it as a selfish statement. I take care of myself first so I can take care of others. And that's the self-care slice of the pie in the well-balanced leader. Why that's important for even a business leader, if you want to turn it back to professional, right? Why self-care is so important for a business leader or an owner or a CEO, whoever it is, someone with significant responsibility, is because once you take care of yourself, you're in your best position to be most clear, most productive, most energetic by just taking care of your own physical and mental well-being. And that can take on many forms. We don't have to go into all the different ways, but I recommend certain approaches, and it has a very routine-based approach to starting your day. Some people like to meditate. Some people like to read. There's an element of exercise. There's quiet time. There's journaling. There are so many different things that you could do very purposely, which does include a physical element. And the physical element does not have to be a hardcore cardio HIIT training program. It could be a fast walk. It could be just a 20-minute walk. So there are so many different ways to get at self-care, it's very individualized, but it's critically important because it drives chemicals in your brain as well that help you to be more clear, productive, and energetic. And the nutrition part of that's also very important. Fueling your body in the right way. That's a whole other element of it. But the physical and nutrition elements that come together that drive better mental and physical well-being drive all the other executable things that you want to do as a professional.
No, I could not agree with this more, and that's why I loved that we got the chance to touch on it. In my own life, I know that when I am getting enough exercise and, taking time to do my quiet time every day and eating things that are good for me and getting my steps in and drinking enough water, that's one I really struggle with. I'd rather be drinking coffee. I'd rather be drinking Dr. Pepper. But when I'm doing those things, I can tell I am a better leader. I am a better coworker. I am a better wife. I'm a better mom because I feel better. I feel more confident. I feel more energetic when I'm getting enough sleep at night. You wake up and good night's sleep can make you a completely different person the next day than the one you were before. So, and this is one of those things that I don't think anybody ever really talked about, and maybe they did, but I do feel like this idea of self-care really emerged during those COVID days when all of a sudden we weren't grinding. We weren't the hamster on the wheel like we had been in previous years. The world to some degree slowed a lot or stopped for a lot of people. And that was kind of one of the first times I know in my career life that I really stopped to think about and realize how hard the grind was. You don't realize you're in the grind when you're in the grind. You don't see yourself on the wheel until it stops turning.
That's right.
And so I love that you're kind of coaching people through this, because as a former workaholic who is trying to make sure that I slow down and make time, for other things in my life, it can be very difficult for people like me to focus on things like health and wellness. So what would your tips be for your clients that come in that they have been grinding for years and they are workaholics, and what are your suggestions for them as far as focusing on their health and wellness?
Yes, so I will give them recommendations on ways they can adopt a consistent routine that works for them, right? It could be a morning routine, it could be at night, it could be anytime, it could be during lunch, but just something that incorporates a steady dose of self-care, right? Which I mentioned a lot of the different elements of it, but it does include physical exercise and good eating and drinking plenty of water, like you mentioned. So my role in that is helping them to find a process that works for them, helping them to stay accountable, and then helping them to see the benefits of doing that. The other thing that's really important that I do want to go back to is, I always set objectives with clients when I start with them. What is it that you want to achieve from this? Where can I add value for you, right? So that could take on many forms, but I do think there's an element of goal setting, right? And when I mentioned goal setting earlier, I think we kind of did it in more of a slant of like, okay, business related organization. I failed to mention, I also set personal goals, right? So, and then I take it back to the calendar. My personal goals go on my calendar. If I have an intention to have one-on-one time with my kids, I put it in my calendar. Sounds silly, but do I have to remind myself I'm having breakfast with my daughter? No, but I do because I live by my calendar, right? So the goal piece is critically important. I think where I feel that I'm adding the most value with any client is that at my core, I want to help people live their very best life. That's what I want. Like I've been privileged to experience. And I want to influence them to live their very best life. And that means different things to different people. But just identifying that and building a plan that they can execute to improve their life, that's a win for me. It could be with leaders of organizations that need balance. It could be with individuals that are just stuck in bad habits. It could be with business owners that think they have to do it all. They can't hire anyone, and they just stuck in doing things the same way they've been doing it because that's all they know. So it's getting people to break out of a bad habit, routine, what have you, and just implement more positivity in their life to help them to be more fulfilled.
That is fantastic advice, and I love it. I love your whole outlook and your coaching program. If our listeners are interested in getting connected with you to either hire you as an executive coach or bring you in to meet their team, or if they have more questions, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking, Katie. The best way is going to my website, richbrunoconsulting.com, and you can go to click a free 30-minute session with me. In fact, I would offer that to all your listeners. Go ahead and do that. So we need to develop a rapport. I'm a relationship builder. I want to know about the potential client, what their needs are, and see if we're the right fit, right? So I would encourage anybody with a question, or if there's a more severe need, like immediately to work together, either way, go to my website, richbrunoconsulting.com, click on the free 30-minute session in the top right corner, and set up time for us to talk. I would love to get to know your team members, your clients, and find a way to help them, whatever that might be.
That's great. So for everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Beth Hand, and my guest today was Rich Bruno. For more information on Rich and the work that he does, be sure to visit richbrunoconsulting.com. For our listeners, don't forget to sign up for that free 30-minute consultation. And Rich, thank you so much for joining me on this show today. For our listeners, we're also going to link everything in the show notes for you. So if you're driving in the car and you didn't have time to write this down, everything is there for you once you get parked and get ready. Rich, thank you again so much for all of the nuggets of wisdom you brought to the show today. We really appreciate it.
I was thrilled to be on your show. Thank you so much, Katie, and to all your listeners, thank you.